Hi, this is Lee. I'm freshly back from the Google Summit where I did a presentation on good Google tools for teaching standard portfolios. So I thought I'd just do a quick video and summarise what I shared with the people at the summit. First of all, a lot of people do have a portfolio already, and quite often it's just in hard copy, but you might have started taking some photos and you might have some documentation that you've uploaded to your drive. It doesn't matter what format it's in, it can be in hard copy as long as you have it collected. I like to say collect an e-portfolio because it can't be lost, it can't be eaten by the dog, it can't go up in flames, your boss can't lose it, and it's easy to put together and refer back to. So first of all, what are the standards? There are no PTCs anymore. They've been replaced by the teaching standards and the code. The code is really about how we behave. The teaching standards are the things that the professional things that we do as teachers and are held accountable to. The professional standards, which are negotiated in the collective contracts, the NZEI and the PPTA, if we meet the teaching standards, we are deemed also to have met the professional standards which are in those contracts. I've put a link in there for a narrative of the teaching standards and also some supporting information, both of which can be found on Educans and are helpful just for understanding what the teaching standards are. You can view the standards as 6 nested circles. First of all, the first 4 are about the context in which we teach. First of all, we understand that in New Zealand we are a bicultural nation founded on the Treaty of Waitangi, and so we must keep that in mind in whatever we teach and do in New Zealand. Secondly, we must carry out inquiry and professional learning and development to be lifelong learners in the teaching profession. We also must have professional relationships with our colleagues, with principals, with our community, our parents, our whānau, and of course our students. We also need to have learning-focused environments. So it's interesting to look around your environment and think about, how is this suitable for learning in my class? What can I change? And at the heart of the matter are the 2 last standards. We design for learning and then we do our teaching. So you need an accountability portfolio. You should have teaching standards evidence in there, and there is a link to that in there for you to check it out. You also need appraisal requirements, and your principals are actually required now to report that they have appraised you against the teaching standards. We also have the professional standards as defined by PPTA and NZEI, and there are alignment documents, and also for early childhood education in this link. We need to look at all of our evidence through Tātai Ako as a lens. So those are the 5 cultural competencies, and I've popped a link in there so that you can remind yourself of what they are. Educans, some links in this slide about information about the teaching standards. For putting together your portfolio is at that link. Out of that document, I've copied this nice little table which summarises 2 different ways for reporting against the teaching standards. That on the left or that on the right. You can see that the only difference is what's in that second line there. So you need a quality practice template, you need at least 2 observations and feedback, you need at least 2 appraisal conversation notes recorded, and you need an annual summary report. I prefer to go to this one on the left-hand side because I think it's more meaningful. Refer to your teaching as inquiry, as a story, and match each of the teaching standards to your story, rather than on this side, which is gathering evidence against each of the standards without necessarily linking it together in a teaching as inquiry story. So first of all, the quality practice template. You need to make a copy of this. It's got to be completed as a whole staff. I suggest that you have a staff meeting, half an hour to 3/4 of an hour, to populate evidence that can be found around your school in which way that you meet meet each of the standards as a whole staff. You can store it as a doc on your Google Drive, and you can have a copy on the wall in the staff room. You can add to it through the year. You can revisit as a staff and update annually. It doesn't need to be linked to evidence, but it can be if you want to. The second thing, the goals and inquiry tracking sheets. So I have got a template, so it's important that you identify what the school goals are and base your inquiry on the school goals. For the sheets, for the observation sheets and feedback, remembering that you need 2 of these, I have got an example here. This is just a very simple thing, but I think it reflects well what you need to do. You have to think about why you're observing and don't just say to meet the teaching standards. So once again, you need 2 of those. 2 appraisal conversation notes. So there's an example from the Educans doc, and I've suggested that you could record the conversation using your phone perhaps, or YouTube. So if you go to YouTube now, you can see that there's this little plus camera there. So you just click on that. You want to go live, and we are going to call this evidence, and I'm going to make it unlisted. And you just hit the go live button and away you go, starting talking about whatever you're wanting to talk about in your appraisal meeting. And you can end that. Yes, we're going to end it. Done. And that's now saved as a video in your channel. I'm going to edit it as well. And you can see it's unlisted, but I'm actually going to make it private so that no other people can look at it. Okay, so that's just one way of recording your appraisal meeting. The other way that I've suggested there is to use a Google Doc and use voice typing. And we tried this in the Google Summit, and it worked very well just by hitting the tools and of course the voice typing and click to speak, and you can see that it will record very well. In fact, this is just a little slow because I'm taking a video of what I'm doing here. It may not come out exactly right, but you get a pretty good transcript of what you actually talk about as long as you have your microphone up close. Finally, the annual summary report. I have an example from university of my own summary report from last year. So this is my 2017 when we used PTCs. I had a link to my blog in it, and I had a record of meetings that I had. So that's a good summary document, and it was signed by my appraiser. There's also an example in there, linked to one that's in Educans. You can make a copy of that. Just if you want to go back and check that you have all your standards covered, I've put a checklist in there. And also from Educans is this nice little table which reminds you to focus on getting a lot of different sources of evidence in terms of voice of others. So bringing it all together is the bit that people find difficult to do, and I've got 6 examples of ways that you can do that in here. My favourite is using Blogger. You can use a Google site as well, or instead of, you can just use your Drive, you can use Docs, and I've given you some examples, and also a Google Keep, which is an awesome little tool to use. Photos in YouTube are also really useful to use. In this slide I have a video which actually will help you set up a blog, and I have an example in there. In Sites, this video is also for helping bringing it all together. In Drive you can set up different folders for each of those, but as I said before, I prefer to have a story of my inquiry and then match the standards to that story. Voice to Docs is really useful. Google Keep. Must have apps for your phone. I think you must have Drive, you must have Docs, Keep, Google Photos and YouTube, and you can do your recordings. YouTube, once again, we've already mentioned that. Use your phone or your laptop, record conversations, make it unlisted or private, and that's about it. Following this slide 26, there are a whole lot of helpful YouTubes about making blogs, making keeps, using Drive, using Docs, using Google Photos. So do go in and have a look at those YouTubes. I do replace them every now and again, so make sure you have the most up-to-date ones, and get your portfolio put together using one of those 6 options that I've given you.